Let's start off. Those who don't know me, I'm Steve Lloyd Moffat, Religious Studies here. And one of our goals of Religious Studies is to expose people to differing traditions that they may not encounter on their own. And so what we're having is 2 weeks of speakers who hopefully challenge the norms of what you think of spiritually and religiously. Today we have Tony Petrovich. And Tony, we could spend the next 50 minutes giving her entire background because it's so rich. But she has a tremendous background in various different religious and spiritual traditions. And now she is a teacher to many people around the world and a YouTube star. And so you can find her stuff on YouTube or through websites. And she does teaching both individually and in groups. And so she happened to be in the area. And so invited her to come and offer some thoughts and have a discussion. So Tony, I'll leave it to you at that.
Great. Okay, that's the website. If you wanted to, this is like youaresacred.com is like a portal to my websites because I have more than one. But when you go to that website, if you're interested in that splash page, it'll take you right into all my videos because I post a new video every week to keep teaching to the world. Which is interesting because YouTube seems to be the place to be. I get more referrals from YouTube than anywhere else. Okay, I have to pay attention to the camera and be in the right place. All right, no I don't. There we go. Okay, good. All right, so the question I asked for the title, when Steve said, what is your title? There were so many. I thought, okay, why do you believe? Why do you believe rather than no? Because this is like the platform of all the classes I teach. Basically what I attempt to do in all of my teaching is to destroy people's belief systems. Because most of the belief systems that exist are not real. They're all based on something else. And I've written a book that I'm going to read a little piece out of just to kind of play with that in a few minutes. So does anybody have an answer to that question? Why do you believe? Yes?
Better than disbelief.
It's better than disbelief?
Yeah.
Okay. What's wrong with disbelief?
I don't know. You're just wandering around if you don't believe in anything.
Okay.
You don't have anything to found it on.
Okay, I can understand that. One of the things that happens with belief and disbelief is that they're actually just about the same. Because when you're believing in something, you are wandering around, unless you're living it. So who in here has a religious belief that they adhere to? Okay, and probably a little bit all over the map. All right. Can you say that that religious belief will sustain you at all times, under all circumstances, for any reason? Can you say yes to that?
Yeah.
And you've proven it to yourself.
Yeah.
You've had some really big, ugly things happen, and it's been there for you. Okay, then you've got a belief system that really supports you. And if a person has a belief system that really supports them, fantastic. We just came from Utah, as I was saying, doing this presentation. We met a lot of LDS people. And the strength of their living their religion was amazing to see because it does support them. So it is something that is of value to them. Most people have beliefs that don't support them. So if you believe in a specific way of worshiping God or going to a certain church, or you believe in your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, etc., all of a sudden you get the aha that comes up out of nowhere when something bad happens. And all of a sudden it doesn't support you. My personal belief system is that we are God. And the reason I say that is because however you see God's source, and I like to use the word source because God's just about, the word's been beaten to death. However you see source, at the beginning of creation, just using terms loosely here, when the first creation began, there was only one thing for source to create with, and that was itself. Now think about that. Here's source, conscious awareness, however you see God, and it's going to create, and there's nothing. What's it going to use? It can only use itself, which means that this body, these glasses, this platform, you have to be God. Otherwise, what was it using? And that's why I say we are God, which a lot of people just kind of take a step back and go, I'm not going there. Because what it does is it makes you responsible for everything that's happening in your life. I'm sorry, you wanted to tell me why you believe.
Well, I just want to say humans in general want answers, and most of the time belief is comfort, and like that's why religions spawn out, is to answer questions that we can't find an answer to because we're always searching.
Yes, wonderful, perfect. And just as you all know, we all live in the United States of America, where we rely on some other person to tell us or help us when something goes wrong. If somebody breaks into your house, you call 911. If you get a stomachache, you go to the doctor. If somebody tries to do some legal process with you, you go to a lawyer. There's no self-sufficiency that is stimulated within our culture. So we're constantly looking out for something else. And where did this come from? One of the things that I teach, and that is a separate presentation that I do, is the work of Zecharia Sitchin. Does anybody know who he is? You don't? Oh, you are in for just a wonderful time. Here's his website. He just died last October. He has absolutely nothing to do with religion per se. He was a linguist and an anthropologist by desire. He was a German Jew who, when he was going to school to learn Jewish religion, realized that what he was being told was not what the letters actually said. So for instance, the Tower of Babel in the Bible was supposed to be this tower, and what the word in Hebrew really means is from heaven to earth comes. And so he spent his whole life translating the Sumerian tablets, which are the first writings that we really know of, and finding out that our Bible, the God we believe in, is in the Sumerian tablets and in the Babylonian writings, because beings came here and messed with the DNA. And that's why you jump from Neanderthal to Cro-Magnon, boom, boom, all of a sudden, because somebody did a little bit of massaging. And he's got 15 books that if that interests you even the tiniest bit, he will take you on a tour that will change everything in your life forever and show you that the belief systems that we have are based upon what I like to call the territorial imperative: more land, more power, and suppression of the people. And this is something that we're all experiencing right now, with everybody having the Occupy and everybody saying no, no, no to the corporations. Well, behind the corporations are also the religions. So one of the invitations that I give you is to question every belief you have, to find out where it comes from. Because when you begin to look at any belief you have, even when you brush your teeth, what you eat for breakfast, why do I believe it's true that this is what I should be doing? You'll find that it came from someone that came from someone that came from someone that came from someone. And it all began when somebody said, I need to control this. There was a great story that I read once in an article in a magazine, where this fellow was trying to help his wife fix Easter dinner. And he said, I'll do the ham, and then you could do the rest. And she said, no, 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 no. You can't do the ham because you don't know how to do the ham. And he goes, you put the ham in the pan, you put it in the oven. She goes, no, 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 no. You have to cut the ends off. And he said, okay. So he let her do it, cut the ends off. Dinner time came. She was there. Her mother was there. And her mother was there. Large generation at the Easter table. So he decided to find out. So he asked his wife's mother if she had taught his wife to cut the ends off the ham. And she goes, well, of course. Everyone does that. And he goes, okay. And so then he asked Grandma, the old matriarch, do you cut the ends off the ham? And she said, what? Of course I cut the ends off the ham. I never had a pan that it would fit in, so I had to cut the ends off the ham. And so it went down through the family that that's how you cook ham. And using that as an analogy, you can look at how different things come into your life and literally do or do not support the way you want to lead your life. Because we're living in a world of dual contrast. That's what this is all about, and that's what my little story is that I'm going to read here in a minute. We're living in a world where there is black, white, in, out, up, down, bad, good. And everybody's wrong, right, bad, good is, to a certain degree, different. Even though you might say, well, that's not true, because we all know in the United States that you can't kill people. Well, it depends. There's a death penalty. So there's always this coloration about what is really true and what isn't true within a world of contrast. And that's what we're doing here. We're looking at what we do like and what we don't like. And what is happening to our civilization and most of the world is that, and people don't even think about this, is that they're constantly running away from that which they don't want instead of running towards that which they do want. And a lot of the Occupy movement is that, of protesting against what we don't want. Nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, my question is, okay, can you spell out here what you do want? Tell me what you do want, how you want it to be. Because until you can say, this is how I want my life to be, there is no way for you to express yourself as God. You're just doing what everybody else tells you to do. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm going to read my little story. I wrote a book called The Call, Awakening the Angelic Human. It has nothing to do with angels. The word angel means messenger. Human, the word human, hu is an ancient form of the word God, man, Homo sapien. So you've got the human being as a message. Each of you in this room has a message within you, literally living in your DNA. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. That wants to come out and be expressed. It's one of the reasons you're at this university, so that you can get the education to express that, provided you're following what your own impetus is inside of you versus what somebody else said, go to Cal Poly and learn this. This is always a big decision point when you're in university of what you're going to do when you leave. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But I just want to read my little contrast story because it's fun and it does a good job of expressing what I'm talking about. It was only a few days into the beginning that God realized that there was a necessity for a meeting of the entire angelic realm, and a consensus reached if duality, one of its better creations, was going to succeed. A memo was sent out letting each of the cherubim, seraphim, thrones, powers, archangels, and angels of all degrees know that a meeting was being called in the boardroom and that a great decision was to be made. The entire angelic realm showed up on the appointed day, of course, since it only knows divine will, and each angel was intently curious about what the question was going to be that could be so important that God would call every single angel into this meeting. They were arranged by rank, with the most important archangels seated nearest the throne of Almighty Source. Everyone was there: Uriel, Metatron, Gabriel, Ariel, Raphael, Michael, Lucifer, Samiel. All of the mighty names appeared in person to sit next to the throne of God as the meeting was called to order. We have before us a very grave decision, God said. I'm going to need the help of every angel of every rank. It seems that there is a piece of duality that hasn't been created, and I'm not going to create it myself. It takes something and someone much more important to create this piece. It has to do with the planet Earth in the Milky Way galaxy, which is going to form in another several billion years. This planet is going to be the home of a particular creation that is going to experience duality for me. And there is the rub. I am one, and I need to be dual to create the opposite so that the creation, which we will be calling man, will be able to learn by contrast how to experience the love that I am. All this God said. And not an angel spoke a word. You could have heard a pin drop if there were a pin to drop. It was so silent. God continued, I'm going to call for a volunteer. I need one angel, most likely an archangel, to hold the opposite end of the energy vibration that is known as love. I need an angel who is strong enough, bright enough, and who loves Source enough that it can hold the opposite end of the energy spectrum that will be called fear. This angel must be capable of enduring endless hardship, be hated by mankind as the most abominable entity imaginable, have horrible actions done in its name, and be thought of as the ruler of a place mankind will create called hell. All of this must this angel do out of love for mankind, so that my second finest creation, angels being the first, may come to know that love really is, experience a polar world, and allow Source to truly experience all. After this part of the announcement, a loud shuffling of chairs was heard as many of the angels of all ranks and dominions left the boardroom chamber. No one wanted to take the part that would be the opposite of love, for that would be like taking the part that would be the opposite of God. By the time the silence was again heard, there were very few angels left and only a handful of higher or archangels. Some of the cherubim, some of the seraphim had also stayed, though they were of no mind to take on this part in the divine play. God sat looking at what was left of the staff and held the divine space for someone to come forward. And then a voice was heard. It was a mighty voice, one like the north wind when it blows through the tundras in Alaska during the wet, frigid nights. It was the voice of Archangel Lucifer. I will play this part with you, O Mighty One. My love for you and my love for your creation knows no bounds. I know that I am strong enough, for you have made me that strong. I know that I have enough love to hold the opposite energetic end of love, for you have created within me ever-enduring love, and I will not forget who I am, for I am you, as are all of your creations. I have the strength, the brightness, the might, and the courage to hold the opposite end of love with you, God, for all eternity, if that is what is required of me. Oh, God was so pleased. His best, his brightest, his bravest archangel was going to take the job and hold the opposite end of duality for all manifested beings. Oh, the creating had gone so well. It looked like the board meeting would come to a glorious end, and God was about to adjourn the few remaining members when it became apparent that Lucifer had another few words to say. And these words were to Archangel Michael. Michael, my brother, he said, I have one reminder for you before we part. I am going to a place where you cannot go, and I am going alone. We will meet many times upon the path before this play is over. I ask that you remember that we are the same every time you see my face. I ask that every time you raise your sword at me in the name of Source, you remember I am Source. If you will remember to do this, mankind will learn the lesson of contrast more gracefully, and my job will be made easier. You must commit to remembering for both of us. Will you agree to this? And Michael, as great an archangel as Lucifer himself, knelt on one knee before his mighty, courageous brother, and bowing his head, he said, Yes, I will agree. My dearest and glorious brother, give me your blessing before we begin our roles in this divine drama. And as Lucifer placed his hand upon Archangel Michael's head, the horns of triumph could be heard blowing throughout the entire universe. For now God's plan was complete, and mankind would be born into duality, into a world of polarity, so that Source could experience what it is like to separate and then once again become one. So I have had some rather unusual reviews of that particular story, and also some people who wanted to use it in their own books. From the standpoint of everything being of God, there cannot be a separation except to have the separation be part of the oneness. Does that make sense? If God, and we'll just use that term here, if God is all, then the idea of being separate is part of the all, and it's part of the oneness. In that is what I call the angelic human message. Each of you in this room began life being imprinted by your parents and your teachers and your various religions and your culture and your peer group, that's a big one, and then life goes on and things move and change and shift. And yet nowhere in our culture or in our school system do we invite people to spend time being silent with themselves so that they can actually really hear what I call the voice of your soul, which comes through your heart. The heart itself, the physical heart in your body, is the strongest electromagnetic organ in your body. It's 5,000 times more electromagnetic than your brain. So when you have an urge to do something, and then your mind says, oh no, don't do that, because the last time you did that, this happened. And you start playing that battle game inside of you. What you're doing is turning away from what your soul, and we'll talk about that in a minute just to get a picture of it for you, what your soul, which is the record of you, is saying to you, if you would just do this now, and it's saying it through your heart. You know how people will say, you know, well, I'm following my heart, and then some people are left-brained and some people are right-brained. All of this is speaking to that idea. But when you follow what your heart is telling you to do, 9 times out of 10, you have to tell somebody no that you are afraid to say no to because of just our culture saying, do it this way, do it this way, do it this way, based on beliefs. And that's why I say, why do you believe? Because if you're believing in something that you don't want to believe in because of a specific, but you know inside yourself when you feel this desire to bring forth something, whatever it is, even if it's just to go get an ice cream cone, that your mind tells you not to do because of. And that's always based on fear. It is never based on, your mind isn't saying, do this because it's the thing you really want to do. Your mind is saying, do this because if you don't, something bad is going to happen. Your heart, if you'll listen to your heart, you will find that your heart will say to you, do this. End of statement. There's no reason as to why it's going to tell you that. And if you practice being in that space, which we're going to do a little practice here in a few minutes so you can see what it feels like, what you're going to do is create within you what's called a coherent wave, which is going to be loosely like this, just because I'm not that good of an artist. Da, 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 da. Okay. So there's coherency, and here is incoherency. You know when you say somebody's incoherent and you can't understand a thing they say? Coherency is what everything in nature lives through, which means the troughs and the crests of the wave are equal. When the troughs and the crests of the wave are equal, you've literally created a carrier wave, which is what the cell phones and your texting and TVs and all that rely on. Because on top of this carrier wave is the information, okay? So when you bring yourself into a coherent state, which you can only do through your heart, what you do is you open the door literally wide open for information to come into you that you've never, ever, ever thought of before. And who is doing the research on that? Of course, the Russians. The Russians are like my main people. There's a group over there, the Guriev group, Dear Peter. And they are doing research that this country wouldn't even begin to play with, using laser light, coherency, and DNA, and literally breaking through information streams where their computer goes from giving them this information to all of a sudden information that they have no idea where it came from. But it's in the DNA and it's coming through the laser light because laser is the most coherent light we know. All of this exists within all that is. And when you get caught up in a belief that says, well, nice talk, Tony, but that's probably not true, or I'm not going there because so-and-so will say that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all you're doing is short-circuiting your ability to receive the message that you are and to bring it out into the world. So whatever you're here studying, and whatever reason you came to study, that has a capacity to be millions of times bigger than what you believe it to be. I'm going to go to Cal Poly and I'm going to study this and I'm going to be one of these people and I'm going to make money, I hope. And all of a sudden you find out that there's all of this other information that can be added to that initial idea that you began studying for, and you begin to shift and change yourself in a way that you would never ever believe is possible. So who here meditates? Anybody meditate? This coherent wavelength that you are is Source expressing as you without fear. And when you can be without fear in your life, and I don't mean the kind of fear that keeps you from walking out in front of the racing Mack truck on the highway. That's just survival. I'm talking about that fear of somebody saying something that's not nice to you, or somebody doing something to hurt you, or somebody leaving you, abandonment, etc. When you move aside from that fear, what you do is you open, literally, physically, open your heart so that the other people around you can feel this in you. And when I teach this, I tell my students, now they can feel you as God, as Source, because there's nothing that is incoherent, which you can't resonate with incoherency. It's impossible, obviously. And you can invite the other person to experience this with you. I've seen this work miracles. You get into that state and you go to a person who's been less than nice to you and you need to get this thing taken care of, and you say, from this state, I am coming to you with an open heart. Will you open your heart to me? You won't believe what's going to happen. No one's going to say no, because they can feel you, and everything in nature wants coherency. The message of you as Source and form flows on coherency. And it's only when you're being coherent that you can actually feel what is really right for you or not. Not what your mind is saying, not what your head is saying. Yes? Okay, so if I'm understanding you right, there's one person who wants to be with somebody.
If you're in love with somebody and they're not in love with you.
Not in love with you, okay. Well, first of all, the idea of being in love is just ridiculous. I mean, we're not in love. We're in lust, we're in like, we're in a lot of things, but we're not in love.
Or in this scenario, having a strong feeling of wanting to be with them.
But you want to be with a person, right? I would, and actually, this is a good example. This is Philip here, the cameraman, is my partner. That happened with us. He came to one of my workshops, and I always look for the people who are going to interact with me, because especially if you're doing a weekend-long workshop, you really want to get into it. We do all kinds of exercises and things. And he did, and it was great. And then he knew, and all of a sudden he realized that there was something that was not complete with us, that there was something that we both wanted that I didn't know. And so he just kept being my friend and saying, anytime you want to change your mind, then I'll be here. I mean, this was years. We just were friends for years. And one day, something happened inside of me, and I went into one of the darkest nights of the soul that you could possibly imagine. I thought I was going to die. I just went into absolute, utter grief. And when I came out of it, I realized that this was the only man I ever wanted to spend my life with. So you don't know what's going to happen in the long run if you'll simply follow. And all he did was, as he said, he kept scratching on my door. Well, all he did was kept being my friend. Took me out to lunch, took me out to dinner, now and then. Helped me do some technical work, just was around, now and then. And held that energetic statement within him that he knew that this is what he wanted. And eventually, it came around. Now, there's a very good chance that this idea that you're giving me that makes me feel like it could be you is that you might not be meant to be together. But there's a very good chance that you are, but that you have to wait. Everything comes in proper timing. This is a just-in-time universe. You know, we try and plan, and yeah, okay, I'm in love with this guy, and now I've already got my dress picked out, and I know where I want to get married, and you've got it all set out. And the universe is going, nah, no plans, no goals. Here, on a universal level, the only thing that ever happens within, I like to say the omniverse, because there's more than one universe, and they're everywhere, is everything happens in the moment it's happening. It doesn't happen necessarily in the stream of time that we would believe it's going to happen in. Does that make sense?
Because I'm still wondering, what if that person didn't reciprocate eventually?
Well,
How
then,
would you explain those competing
well,
desires?
well, the thing is that the person who's having the I want to be with this person has a reason that that's happening, okay? That's obvious. There's a feeling in the heart that says, I want to be with this person. The other person says no. The other person's not ever going to say yes, using this example. As time goes by, things are going to change. I mean, the example you gave me is using the idea that that's what's going to happen. But in the midst of life, say, like for us, it was 2.5 years. In the midst of that 2.5 years, what else is going to happen between the person who wants the other one and the other person? You don't know what's going to happen. All you can do is keep following what your heart says until something happens one way or the other. Most of the people in here are pretty young, with the exception of these two beloveds over here who are much closer to my age. So you know, and I think you would agree, that life really does it for you, doesn't it? Yes. You know, you know the movies where you see the grandma sitting on the rocking chair on the porch going, it will pass. This too will pass. I get it. I'm 64. I get it. It all just passes. And when you're younger, you don't feel it at all. You think like, no, we have to go to do this and do that, and there's all these things and excitement and energy. And then you just see it just happening the same way over and over and over and over. And you go, oh yeah, it's all the same. And it just keeps happening the same. There's just not a lot of variety here. It looks like there is, but there isn't. So just, if this is you, I will be gracious here, give it time. Just give it time. Follow what your heart is saying, and just give it time. Yes? I use the term passion in my classes when I ask. In fact, I just created a whole other class called Soul Enterprise, so that people can literally find what their passion is. Their real passion, not the thing they're told is supposed to be their passion. And that term of passion is different than what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. You're really talking about emotion and the emotional input that comes when people want certain things to happen. Murderers have a lot of passion, you know, and there's a lot of things that happen that aren't necessarily the most beneficial, because a person feels this emotion. But if you take a person, let's just use a murderer for instance, and you took the murderer who's finally decided not to murder anymore, so we could talk to them, and took them backwards through their life to see what led them to where they are, you would begin to realize that it's all based on fear. And the only thing that they think they can do is to get rid of something so that they feel like they have more power. When we stand outside of judgment, not to say anybody's supposed to murder anybody, when we stand outside of judgment of it, and we say, okay, what's going on here? Do we have to really stop this person because this might happen again? Or what? Our society doesn't have any sort of remedial help for these people. Let's just lock them up, kill them, do something, get rid of them. We don't like them. And the emotional output that can happen, or somebody who is abusive to somebody else, that emotional is not what I'm talking about. The heart whispers. The heart tells you so quietly, and all you have to do is do what it says. But to get there, you have to be silent to hear what you really are feeling. Otherwise, it's way too easy, especially with all of the energetic electromagnetics we've got going around us constantly. It's way too easy to get distracted and to believe something is true that isn't true. If you would just spend, and if you decide to do this, if you spend 5 minutes a day, it's going to get to 10, it's going to get to 15, it's going to grow on you, because what it does is it creates endorphins in your brain. It's like a runner's high. And you just feel so good, you want more and more and more of it. And you can always go into this place, and what you're doing is you're connecting with the record that is you. That's what the soul is, like a record of everything that you are. You're connecting with that, and you're saying, okay, what needs to be done now? How should I do this now? Whatever it is. And inviting your mind to be quiet. Because then emerging from this voice of your soul, which knows way down the line what's going to happen, it will tell you what is next, what is next, what is next. And yet you have to give it permission. And in our society, it is a stretch. So it's something you have to take on as a practice. Yes? I thought, yeah.
I was just confused on, okay, so you're saying to listen to your heart for certain things, but then you don't listen to it for other things, or you wait for the long run. So when do you act upon your heart?
Well, when I was talking to this young lady over here, what I'm saying is, if, say for instance, and using Philip and me as an example, he was having this heartfelt feeling about me. I was not in a position to want to get into a relationship. And I kept saying no. So he just stayed with that feeling and just kept being around me. So it's not ignoring your heart, it's just realizing that the timing isn't there yet, and that if you are going to be wanting this other person, then you're going to need to just hold this feeling in your heart, be around them, be nice to them, do things with them, whatever you can do, and wait to see what's going to happen. Because you don't know if the two of you are going to come together or not. One of the things that I love about being older in life is seeing the weaving of things. If I hadn't done this, and if I hadn't gone here, and if I hadn't said this to this person, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da, all of a sudden you look back and you realize, oh my gosh, every moment that I did what I was really feeling the urge to do took me to this other place. And I would never have been there. I would have been off doing some other thing that I didn't really like. Yes?
So going back to your statement earlier, this kind of relates of how your belief that we are God, we created ourselves.
Yes.
What would you say to somebody who, or so if we are God, how is it that we don't know?
Oh, because that's it.
That's
That's
know what's
the,
going to happen.
that's the experience. That's the thing that is such a kick, is that, and using terms loosely here, and just coming from the way I see it, okay, which doesn't necessarily fit into other people's religious beliefs. When Source said it wanted to create, it wanted to experience everything. I, Source, want to experience everything. It meant everything, including forgetting what it is. And that's where we are. The human beings get to be the forgetters. And when you start working with your heart in this way, that's why I like this, you begin to start to remember. One of the things that came out of this summit that we did in Utah is everybody was going around saying, pirate up, because I like Pirates of the Caribbean. And they were just saying, you know, that should be your new phrase, pirate up. Pirate up to the place where you just stand there and you take charge and you say, no, this is the way it is for me because I can feel it inside of me. I can feel me. And I know this is how it is for me. Doesn't mean it has to be that way for you or anybody else. But it's this way for me, and because it's this way for me, then this is my truth, because all truth is relative. If there was one truth out there, then we would all know what that truth is. All truth is relative. My truth is different than your truth. Could be close, but it's different. And even about what to eat for breakfast. So when you stand up for your own knowing versus believing, and you take that into, I am now going to act on this, then you see yourself acting as God. Oh, I thought somebody had their hand up. Okay, so I'm being told to be quiet now. Thank you so much.
Wrap up and say thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm sure Tony will hang around for a few minutes if you guys want to ask him
Sure.
questions. Otherwise, class.
And go on my website. I have a newsletter that I send out every week if you're at all interested in knowing more. And you can subscribe to it there, and we can have lots of fun.